Hello kids, welcome to Jatin Academy, where science isn't just studied, it's experienced. Today we're starting ICSE Class 7 Biology's first and most exciting chapter, Cell, the structural and functional unit of life. You might be thinking, why so much importance to something so small? Because from you and me to trees and elephants, everything alive starts with a tiny cell. In this video, you'll discover what is a cell and why it's called the foundation of life, how cells were discovered and which scientists gave us the cell theory, types of cells, unicellular and multicellular, different shapes and sizes of cells, what's inside a cell, and how organelles like mitochondria, ribosomes and chloroplasts work like a mini factory. So kids, if you want to understand biology through stories, not boring textbooks, watch till the end. And if you haven't subscribed to Jatin Academy, do it now so you never miss fun learning. Let's begin this amazing microscopic journey together.
Children, today I'm going to tell you a truly amazing story. This is the story of our beginning, the real foundation of life. So come on. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine you are standing in the middle of a huge forest. In front of you is a giant elephant. Far away, there's a tall acacia tree, and right near your feet, a tiny insect is crawling on the ground. Now, think for a second. What do these three things have in common? The elephant, the tree, and that tiny insect. All of them started from the same thing. Would you like to know what that one thing is? It is the cell. Yes, that tiny little cell which begins the real story of life. You might wonder, such a big tree from one small cell? But listen carefully. Whether it's a tree, an elephant, me, or you, we all began our lives from a single cell. This small cell slowly divides and forms an entire body. Breathing, digesting food, thinking, speaking, everything happens inside this cell. That's why the cell is called the basic structural and functional unit of life. In other words, the most essential and smallest unit of life. Now let me tell you another fascinating story. Many years ago, about 400 years back, there was a scientist named Antony van Leeuwenhoek. He didn't have a fancy lab or high-tech equipment, but he had something even more powerful, a deep passion to observe and discover. He built a microscope himself, a very simple one with just a single lens. And one day, when he looked at a thin piece of frog's skin under it, he saw tiny little moving things. He got super excited. He realized these tiny units were alive. Although he didn't call them cells, he was the first person to show us that something very small but very alive exists inside us. Now let's come to the real story of how the term cell was born. A few years later, another scientist named Robert Hooke came along. He was a very curious man. He made a more advanced microscope called a compound microscope. One day, he looked at a thin slice of the bark of a dry tree, and what he saw were small box-like structures. These boxes reminded him of the small rooms in a monastery, which were called cells. And just like that, Hooke began calling them cells. That was the moment when the most important discovery in biology got its name, cell. But remember, what Robert Hooke saw were dead cells, just the outer walls. The living part inside those walls is called the protoplasm. And this protoplasm has two main parts. First, cytoplasm, like the land inside the cell, where all the activities take place. Second, nucleus, like the brain of the cell. It decides what the cell will do, when it will divide, and how it will survive. So you see, children, This tiny little cell holds an entire world within it, a world where the story of our life begins. So, the next time you look at yourself in the mirror or look at a tree, just remember, every big thing begins from a tiny little cell, and that's where the greatest miracle of life is hidden. Children, so far, you've learned that every living being begins with a tiny cell. But have you ever wondered, how many cells are there in a living organism? And what do these cells actually look like? So come, today, I'll take you into a world where you'll meet cells that are small, big, round, long, thin, fat, all kinds. Let's first talk about the number of cells. Some organisms are made up of just one single cell. For example, bacteria, yeast, amoeba, paramecium, and chlamydomonas. All of these are called unicellular organisms. Uni means one. Now imagine a whole living being, which has to digest food, move around, breathe, and all of that is done by just one cell. Isn't that amazing? Now let's talk about living beings like you and me. We and all the plants and animals around us are multicellular. That means we're made up of millions and billions of cells. A rose plant, a neem tree, an earthworm, a fish, a lion, a deer, and we humans, all of our bodies are made up of countless cells. Multi means many. So next time someone says, "You're so complicated," just smile and say, "Of course, I have millions of cells inside me." Now let's talk about the shapes of cells. Just like people come in all shapes, tall, round, thin, cells too come in different forms. The body of an amoeba is completely irregular, meaning it doesn't have a fixed shape. Chlamydomonas, an organism that lives in water, is oval-shaped. Our red blood cells are also oval, so they can easily pass through even the thinnest blood vessels in the body. Now there's paramecium. It looks like a slipper. This is called an oblong shape. Muscle cells are long and stretchy, so they can pull bones and help us move. Now the most interesting, nerve cells. They're so long that they can send a signal all the way from your toe to your brain. Imagine what a long messaging line is working inside your body. Leaf cells, the ones found in leaves, are usually cubical or rectangular. Plants also have cells in other shapes, polygonal, elongated, and even tube-like. And now comes the biggest question. What is the size of a cell? Well, children, most cells are so small that you can see them only with the microscope, but their size can vary a lot too. The smallest cells are found in bacteria. Their size is just 0.2 to 0.5 micrometers, and 1 micrometer is 1,000th of a millimeter. The longest cells are nerve cells, which in humans can be up to 3 meters long. You might be wondering, that long? Yes, inside our bodies are nerve fibers that carry signals from the feet all the way to the brain, and these are cells too. Now let's talk about the largest cell. Do you know which one it is? A bird's egg. Yes, the yellow part you see in an egg is actually a single cell. An ostrich egg is so big that its diameter can be around 170 to 200 millimeters. So, children, today you've learned that cells are not only essential, they are also fascinating. For every shape, every size, and every function, nature has designed a different type of cell. Cell theory, the story of the cell and its 3 heroes. Children, today I'm going to tell you about a theory, one that revealed one of the greatest truths of life. This theory is called cell theory. But wait, before we understand it, just think for a moment. When you look at a leaf on a tree or your own palm, do you feel like they have anything in common? They look completely different, right? But if you observe them under a microscope, you'll see a similar pattern, tiny little blocks, all looking alike. These blocks are called cells.
Now let's dive into the story of the theory, the one that taught us that cells are the true foundation of life. Cell theory tells us every living organism, whether it's a tiny bacterium or a giant elephant, is made up of one or more cells. A cell is not just the structural part of the body, but also its functional unit. Everything we do, walking, talking, thinking, breathing, all happens because of cells. And the most important part, every new cell comes from a pre-existing cell. Now think, did one person come up with this whole theory? No. Behind this theory were three brilliant scientists, not freedom fighters, but you could call them science patriots, who together gave birth to this groundbreaking idea. The first hero was Matthias Jakob Schleiden, a German botanist, or plant scientist. In 1838, he said, "Every plant is made up of countless cells, and each cell performs different functions." The second hero was Theodor Schwann, a German zoologist, an expert in animals. In 1839, he observed that even animal cells have a nucleus, surrounded by cytoplasm and a membrane. He declared, "Both plants and animals are made up of cells, and the cell is the unit of both their structure and function." And now comes the third hero, Rudolf Virchow. In 1858, he added the most important piece to the theory. He said, all cells arise from pre-existing cells, meaning no cell comes out of nowhere. It is always formed by the division of an existing cell. The combined ideas and discoveries of these three formed the cell theory, which is still considered the foundation of biology today. Now think about this. Whether you look at a tree's leaves, its roots or trunk, or the muscles, skin, or bones of an animal, if you look through a microscope, you'll see cells everywhere. In every living part, there is one thing in common. They are all made of cells. The shape and size may differ, but their basic structure is nearly the same. So children, the next time you sit under a tree or look at yourself in the mirror, pause for a second and think, this whole body, this entire life, is built from countless cells that work nonstop, tirelessly, and without complaint. And that is the real story of cell theory, a theory that's not just a line in a textbook, but a powerful truth about life. Children, so far we've learned what a cell is, who discovered it, and how many types it can have. But today, I'm going to tell you something new. Did you know, as big and complex as our body may seem, its real power lies hidden in each and every cell. Every action we take, breathing, walking, digesting food, thinking, even smiling, all of it happens because of our cells. So let's discover how cells are the true heroes of our body, whether it's a plant or an animal. How do cells work in plants? Let's first step into the world of plants. You must have seen how the roots of a tree go deep into the soil. But have you ever wondered, how do they pull in water and minerals? Well, that amazing job is done by the cells of the roots. If for some reason the root cells die, the whole plant can dry up. Yes, even a tiny cell is that important. Now let's talk about leaves. Leaves aren't just green. Inside their cells is something called chlorophyll, which uses sunlight, carbon dioxide from the air, and water from the soil to make food for the plant. This process is called photosynthesis. So next time you look at a leaf, don't just think of it as green. It's a tiny factory working day and night. Now let's go into the world of animals. Have you ever run a race or lifted something? That's all thanks to your muscle cells.
They contract and stretch so that your body can move. Now let's go inside the stomach, where food goes. Food doesn't just sit there and digest on its own. Special cells in different glands release enzymes to help break it down. For example, the saliva in your mouth, that's made by the cells of your salivary glands. This saliva starts breaking down starch in food into a sugar called maltose. But kids, none of this would be possible without energy. And guess who makes that energy? Cells, by oxidizing the glucose from the food we eat. This energy helps keep our body warm, keeps us moving, and even helps us think. So we can say, life exists because cells exist. Now let's go on a mysterious journey inside a cell. If we look at any animal or plant cell under a microscope, we'll find 3 important parts inside. 1. Cell membrane. This is the outer wall of the cell. Thin, flexible, and selective. That means it decides what goes into the cell and what stays out, just like the gate of a house. Not everyone can walk in. Now, if you look at a plant cell, there's one more layer outside the membrane, called the cell wall. It's strong, non-living, and made of cellulose. It gives the plant cell its shape and protection, just like the walls of a fort. Next, cytoplasm, the magical fluid inside the cell. It's thick, colorless, and jelly-like. All the small organelles float in it, like a busy marketplace in a city. Next, nucleus. This is the brain of the cell, a small round part in the center of the cytoplasm, but it does the biggest job. The nucleus controls all the activities of the cell, helps it divide, and stores genes, which decide how we look, how tall we'll be, the color of our eyes, and much more. Inside the nucleus is a special fluid called nucleoplasm. Floating in it is a small dark dot called the nucleolus, and thread-like structures called chromatin fibers. When a cell is about to divide, these fibers become thicker, and then they're called chromosomes. Every cell in the human body has 46 chromosomes, arranged in 23 pairs. So kids, a cell isn't just a tiny dot under a microscope, it's an entire world on its own. A world with rules, a brain, energy, and even the power to make copies of itself. So the next time you see a leaf, an animal, or even look at yourself, smile and say, "You're special," because inside you live countless functional heroes called cells. The city inside a cell, the amazing organelles. Children, have you ever wondered, how does our body work? How do we think, laugh, run, or eat? We now know all of this happens because of cells. But have you ever imagined what's really inside a cell? Today, let me take you inside a microscopic city called the cell. And in this city, there are many tiny workers called organelles. These organelles work just like organs in our body, just like our heart, lungs, and brain. Similarly, inside the cell, each organelle has its own job. Some make energy, some make proteins, and some clean up the waste.
So let's begin this microscopic journey inside a cell. As soon as we enter the cytoplasm, the first thing we come across is a web-like structure called the Endoplasmic Reticulum, or ER. It's spread throughout the cell, just like a network of roads in a city. Through it, materials made in one part of the cell are transported to other parts. Next, we meet some tiny grain-like structures. These are called ribosomes. They make proteins, like little factories building the bricks of our body. Now we move toward the area that gives the cell its energy, the mitochondria. Small, oval-shaped bodies, they may look tiny, but they do a huge job. They break down glucose and create energy, which is then stored in a chemical form called ATP. That's why they are called the powerhouse of the cell. Now we move toward the Golgi bodies. They act like the post office of the cell, packaging things like enzymes and hormones and delivering them to the right places inside or outside the cell. Next we meet the lysosomes, the cleaners of the cell. If any part of the cell gets damaged or an unwanted enemy like a bacteria enters, the lysosome digests and destroys it. They are called the suicidal bags of the cell because when it's time for the cell to self-destruct, lysosomes break themselves open and help dissolve the entire cell. Now we move towards the centrosome, something found only in animal cells. It is located near the nucleus and helps the cell divide, which means the preparation for making a new cell begins here. Now let's walk over to a special corner of the plant cell where we find some unique organelles called plastids. These plastids come in different types. Chloroplasts. These are green in color and help with photosynthesis. They trap sunlight and use it to prepare food for the plant. Chromoplasts. They contain color pigments like red, yellow, and orange. They are the reason flowers and fruits have such bright colors. Leucoplasts. These are white or colorless, and they help store things like starch, oils, or fats. Now let's take a look at the difference between plant and animal cells. 1. Plant cells are generally larger in size and have a well-defined outline. In contrast, animal cells are smaller and their outer boundary is less distinct. 2. Plant cells have a strong cell wall, while animal cells do not have a cell wall. 3. The cytoplasm in plant cells is thin, whereas in animal cells, the cytoplasm is dense and spread throughout the cell. 4. Plant cells have one or more large vacuoles that are permanent, while animal cells have small, temporary vacuoles. 5. Plastids are present in plant cells but absent in animal cells. 6. Centrosomes are found in animal cells but not in plant cells. 7. The Golgi bodies in plant cells are called dictyosomes. They are simpler. In animal cells, the Golgi bodies are more complex. So children, that was our journey inside a microscopic world. Next time you pick up a leaf or look at yourself in the mirror, just imagine there are millions of organelles inside you, working together day and night, without breaks, without holidays. Because cells are not just the basic units of life, they are living, breathing cities where every organelle is a responsible citizen. If you enjoyed this magical journey inside the cell, don't forget to like and share this video. We'll meet again next time with another amazing story from the world of biology. Until then, always remember, it's the tiny parts that build the greatest lives.